And then since then, I've been really privileged to live in the US as an au pair, looking after young children, in the UK, you know, with my travel industry job that I ended up getting later on. You know, I've lived on the Gold Coast. I've lived in, you know, in Brazil in chunks of time. So I've had a bit of cultural, and I think because of that experience from my young age, I've grown to kind of be really fluid and resilient and being able to live in different cultures and on different languages, and you know what I mean? So what started off as being really hard has really served me in my adult years as I grew. And the biggest part of that as well, I think, you know, when you don't speak a language, when you eat differently, when you don't, like, all of that, you know, I suppressed not speaking Arabic and French. I never wanted to speak my first languages again. You know, I wanted to learn. I got bullied a lot. Like, you know, I've been all sorts of type of bullying, like physical and, you know, verbal, just because I was different. And I think that's why I do the work that I do today. And I'm so passionate about working with youth because, one, I want for the youth that are going through stuff to understand how they can help themselves in that process and become more resilient in whatever they're going through, right? And then also there's that part of me of, I want the bullies, I want those on the other side to also be understood.
Yeah.
And how we can manage this better for our children.
Yeah.
So I am, and I think also me doing this work has helped me heal a lot of that stuff that I went through as a child myself. So it's quite or intricate for me. But I just guess I get really, really passionate about working with children and families and helping people understand that child psychology, is because I use this analogy with everybody, right? Adults become these big onions, and it depends on how much trauma and how much stuff they've gone that they haven't dealt with in life is how big that onion is, right? But then we get to a certain age in our adult life, and especially kind of, you know, I joke about it since I hit my 40s, oh, like there's all this wisdom coming out and all these like peeling back of stuff that I didn't know I needed to do, right? But most of us get to that 40, 50 and we're no longer fulfilled by these things that we thought fulfilled us in, you know, in our everyday life. And we start peeling back all this stuff. And the more stuff we haven't dealt with, the more there is to peel back. And my philosophy is, let's work with the little sprout down here that hasn't formed that layers and that conditioning, and give them the tools to deal with the stuff as they grow, you know, through life. So hopefully when they're up here and their 40s and 50s, it's not this big, fat, ugly onion that they need to peel back and cry tears and tears and tears and dig to get to that core. Does that make sense? So that's...
Yeah, totally. And you know, that when my son was young and I really wanted to be a parenting coach, I had worked with adults. I'd been working with adults for a number of years, and I thought to myself, you know, and often the place that we start is, well, you know, what beliefs did you take on as a child that now we need to get rid of, where, you know, you're not good enough, you don't fit in, you don't belong, you're not smart enough, you know, all these things that we carry around as adults. And I thought to myself, well, if we could help parents to, you know, instill some positive beliefs in their kids when they're young, then, you know, we give them half a chance. But I mean, as parents, like, I resigned to myself that we're always going to muck up our kids to some level. Like, there's no doubt, like, no parent is the perfect parent. And even if they are, like, the kid, you know, we're actually designed to go through challenges. And so the child will manifest challenges because they need to learn these strategies, and they've got to, you know,
that's how growth happens.
They've got to create resilience. But in this modern age of screens, you know, and in terms of screen time, you know, the kids coping mechanism is to hide behind a screen and to play more video games. And, you know, even our son, he was bullied at one school, and he had a lot of social anxiety type issues, a very shy kid. And, you know, he got really ill, he got chronic fatigue, and he literally spent 3 months in his room playing video games just to cope with what's going on. So as a parent, you know, I definitely don't judge other parents whose child's coping mechanism is their screens. But I thought, you know, if we could perhaps give 3 really concrete ways that we can help parents to support their kids through life's ups and downs, and give them other strategies that aren't just completely absorbing themselves in screens and wanting to escape.
Look, totally. And I'm going to be really upfront and honest and transparent. I have had the most horrendous 2 days, and last night was just horrendous with my 9-year-old, over screen time and over the meltdowns. And, you know, I just want to make it really clear to any parent watching this, no one is perfect. Even when you've done the psychology degree, and even when you've done training, you know, on all the aware conscious parenting stuff, like I've done all it, like I have such an understanding, and you know what, we're all humans, and I'm human, and there's breaking points where I haven't had enough sleep, I haven't had enough support, and I break, you know, and then I can't be there for the kids. So to any parents listening to this, like I want you to really be gentle with yourself. And I guess that's where I've gotten to a point, you know, like I started having my monkey mind going, oh, you're a crap parent, you know, how did it get to this? But I guess this is where now I do have the tools to go, hang on a minute, is that really true? Are you a crap parent? Are you just really depleted? Where's your cup empty? Where do you need to fill it? How can we turn this around? How can we like pick up and speak to our child again? And mind you, you know, when I looked at the bigger picture stuff, I actually thought I did really well. Like I think I raised my voice twice in the whole thing. But I actually don't think screens are bad. There's so much positive to our children having screens, right? And we have come into an age now where things used to take 10 years to come to fruition, where now they're like happening within a year or two. And I just think with our kids, it's going to move faster and faster, right? I know when I used to go into this mentoring program at a high school and mentor year 8s. And once I had a group to mentor where we were talking about technology, and it blew my mind and really gave me this like awareness, this perspective of even our teachers can't be teaching our children because our children are advanced in this and know what they know. Mm-hmm. It blew me away, right? So that these kids, year 8 kids, are teaching their teacher about coding.
Yeah.
And programming in the way that, you know, especially when it comes to gaming, that we were never exposed to.
Yeah.
So we've got these challenges as parents where we don't understand really what it's like for our children right now. And so it is really imperative that we are gentle with ourselves, which in turn, then we are gentle with them.
Yeah.
You know, and I was able to hold that space for my oldest yesterday. He had his meltdown like for 2 hours where I needed to really hold him, and he fell asleep in my arms in the end because he was just so exhausted. But that's also that technique of not taking on our children's emotions. Their emotions are theirs, and really tap into like what is our own emotion and what's the trigger here. And I just made it really clear that they need to go to sleep, and then we will communicate about it this morning. And I look at parenting as something that we need to do side by side with our children. Like I really am not into this concept, and I grew up with this, and not just, you know, like my mum didn't know what she didn't know. She's an amazing mum, but there was still this, you know, like the parent is here and the child is here, and it's do as I say, and I know better than you. And yes, we do know a lot more than our children because, well, we're older and we've had more experience and our brain is developed now, you know. But the thing is, for me to have strong, respectful, connective relationships, and that's what's most important to me, is to have my children involved. So I want them involved in their iPad, you know, rules and strategy. And, you know, this morning we had the conversation, like it wasn't okay the way you spoke to me yesterday. Can you see how the iPad is impact you right now? Because there's addiction traits, you know, coming through, like there's addiction behavior coming through. And I think that's when it becomes a problem. And that's where you need strategies as a family together rather than just as the parent. That's why I love your ScreenCoach program, in that you and the child sit down together and come up with these strategies, and they need to be involved in that, right?
Yeah.
So what was your original question? Because I really did need to share that, because I was really raw about it this morning. And, you know, I had lots of tears. I haven't had enough sleep, which impacts our mood and the way that we feel. So I guess I just really want to make it clear, like there's no perfection. There's no such thing as just because I work with kids and families and all that, like that I get it right and that it doesn't happen to me. It happens to all of us. And I dare any parent, I would challenge any parent to say, oh no, we've got all this perfectly.
Yeah.
If you do, you just don't have an iPad in your house, so you haven't had to deal with it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that is a strategy for a lot of people. They just don't have
it was for me up until the beginning of this year. We did not have technology. And I think that's why my system as a mother as well is in a bit of shock, because it's been introduced this year. And because we've been at home and they've had it so much,
yes,
I'm like, oh my God, I've lost my children. I've lost my children who were able to go out and sit in a restaurant till 10 p.m, way past their bedtime, and colour in and talk to adults.
Yes.
We can't even sit at the dinner table without them wanting to run off with the urge to check on their, game and what's happening with their rewards and stuff.
Yes.
So, it's all about, the biggest thing is open communication. And I know we can feel like a broken record, and I do get fed up with that myself sometimes, but I have to come back into my own body and go, this is all new for all of us. What am I wanting to achieve here at the end of the day? And what's important to me?
Yeah.
It's really important for parents to go, why am I doing this, and what is important for me? What am I wanting to get out of this at the end of the day? And that's where I teach about values, about like coming back to your own values, and we're all different. So what works for me is not going to be the same to what works for your child, and this is where I always say to all parents, no one's an expert on your child but you, because I don't know your child as well as you do, and so it comes down to what is important to you, what is important for your family, and working together side by side with your children to achieve that and have part of the process.
Yeah. So in terms of building resilience and helping our child through those emotional ups and downs, if we're trying to keep screen time balance, and they're having a hard time, they're being bullied, or they're having anxiety, or school is all too hard for them, or they're exhausted, whatever it is that's going on for them, and they're feeling emotional and highly strung, and they don't want to engage in the family, and all they want to do is hide in their rooms on their screens 24/7. How can we support them through that? If we want to keep healthy screen time balance, and we can see that their emotions are running really high, like as a parent, I often will give my kids more leeway, more screen time when I know they're like that. But how else can I support them when they, during those times?
See, and that's what I love, because I'm the opposite. I actually rein it back. And now we are actually going to put the screen away for a week, because I don't know. And what I want to do is give their brain the evidence of how, when the screen is not there, how they feel better about themselves, because they're both waking up super tired, way before, like they are just.
You're saying that you're thinking the screen is impacting on their mood.
It is. It really is. It's impacting on their sleep. It's impacting on their mood. Yeah. And so for me, but this is what I want parents to work out for themselves, because there's no straight answer for.
Yes.
And this is, I think, I'm going to actually really speak to this right now, because I think this is the problem in our era right now with families, is they don't trust themselves. My mum did not have all this stimulus to kind of think, am I raising my child right and not screwing them up? She just did what she thought was best with what she knew, right? And right now, because we've got all this information, parents doubt themselves so much.
Yes.
And not trusting that they know their child best, and that they need to, be meeting their child how they need to. So I could, like, if I was coaching you, for example, I wouldn't come in and say, you need to take the screen away and you need to do what I do, because that wouldn't work for your family. And you know your children best. You know intuitively what is best for your children and for your family. And so what I would do is work out what your values are. Like, if you didn't know that, work out what your values are and what everything means to you in how you respond to that. So for me, having a really strong sense of self and being responsible for self are really huge for me in how I raise my children. And so taking the iPad away from them to give their brain a break And we've done this before, and they have been able to go back and regulate themselves. But then sometimes it just gets a bit too much, and, you know, and it's just a pattern. But, you know, I just feel like if they are able to be responsible, you know, for their time with it, by me taking it away and then slowly reintroducing it, I know they thrive best like that.
Yeah.
But your son, for example, is going to be different. So again, it comes down to coming together and speaking together. Like, communication is key and number one.
Yeah.
And then getting them to set up their own consequences for things also helps. So for example, like, I know with my 9-year-old in particular, it's like, Mum, just let me do this and I will then do that. And then I'm like, yeah, okay, because you've set that up for yourself. Yeah. And please show me and show yourself, most importantly, that you can do that. And he does that. It's so much more powerful than just having that sort of free reign on the iPad or gaming.
Yeah.
And I really believe that's how they do build their own resilience. I think sometimes as parents as well, we don't allow them to build that resilience because we're so afraid of them being so upset.
Yes. So can you talk to me about that? You said that yesterday or the day before that your son had a huge meltdown and you just sat with him and just held the space for like a couple of hours. Now, most parents wouldn't do that. Most parents would say, go to your room, get over yourself, come out when you've calmed down. You know,
and I had to do that at the beginning.
Too old for this nonsense.
No, I didn't do that. But, you know, I did have to send him to his room to begin with because I had to deal with his brother. And it wasn't safe for his brother. So I did have to separate and say, and it wasn't, again, so much as go to your room. It was like, go to somewhere you can be safe.
Yeah.
So for him to pick, you know, he can go jump on the trampoline.
Yeah.
Like, as long as he was moving his body, or, you know, so I was like, go into your room, play with your Lego. I need to deal with this. And then I'll come and deal with you. So it's not so much like, just go to your room. You're too old for this. You know, we're not going to deal with this, because that doesn't teach resilience. That just teach how to block and suppress your feelings and get over it. And this is such a thing that as mothers, you know, we need to shift in society. Like, this is a whole new paradigm we do need to build. And it is big. It is huge, right? But if we don't commit to this, we're just going to keep on repeating these cycles where boys are not allowed to cry like girls. You know, all these yucky sayings that we have in our society, like man up, you know, grow some balls, all these really just non-serving statements. We're just going to be, you know, perpetuating that cycle.
Yeah, but even for girls, you know, if they become emotional, like my daughter, she can be very expressive emotionally, and she gets bullied for it at school. They tell her that she's a baby, that she's
Is this from bullied from other children, or do you mean teachers or the
No, from other children. No, mostly from other children. But I probably, bullied is probably a strong word, but she gets criticized, like she gets ostracized for it.
Yeah.
And, you know, they say to her, you should calm down, and why do you overreact so much? But she's genuinely
have this language in society to begin with. But, you know, I do really believe that everything starts at home. Everything starts with self. And, you know, all these parents that are worried about their children, you know, and want all this stuff for their children, where it's like, well, you need to get on board so that you can have these things for your children, because you need to have them for yourself first. You know?
Yeah. So, you know, if a child comes home and they're having a meltdown because everything's all too much, tell me what to do. Tell me what I should do.
Well, the thing that I do with my boys,
it's often, the funny thing is, it's often over something that's really trivial. So let's say I ask them to set the table, right? This is a perfect example.
Yeah.
Okay, every night, please set the table. They set the table. Tonight, please set the table. Oh, I don't want to set the table. I hate you.
Yes. That's what we have. That's what for last night. But it's stacking. So recognize that your child is acting out because they do not know how to express their stacking from the day of everything that's happened, you know, for them. And the table is just the outlet of them not being able to express that. So it has nothing to do with you. And the reason they would say they hate you, which mine did last night, is because he knows that I love him no matter what. So when I say to him, I love you, I make sure I tell him I love you, not because you're doing great things. I love you even when you're not. I like we're their safe space. So that's why they're able to have those meltdowns. So what I do, and this is what I did last night myself, is first I give them the opportunity to be able to self-regulate themselves.
Yeah.
And like last night, it's gone way too far beyond that, and he wasn't able to. A few things that we can do. My number one thing is stay connected. That is the most important thing. And I visualize like a thread between my heart and their heart, where I'm always just sending out that love to them no matter what. And then when I falter, like I did a little bit last night, I take myself out and I sit down and do my breathing techniques. I come back into my body, because most of the time when we're having these big emotions, we're not in our body. We're not grounded, whether it's like simple little exercises that I do with little ones who get it, but they work for us just as well. Grab your hand and just draw circles in it, or just trace the lines on your hand and breathe, or just, like the finger exercise, because you're being kinesthetic, you're touching, you're like, you're feeling your body and coming back into yourself and breathing. Breathing is so important. Like I know everybody goes, oh, just breathe, but I'm serious. Like it is a really important part of slowing down all the hormones, all the chemicals, everything that's going on in your brain.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing. Getting out in nature is another. But I always give them the opportunity to do it for themselves first. And like say that example with, I don't want to do the table, rather than responding, well, you have to, and like coming back, like you're part of the family and this is your chores and you have to do it. Just step back and go, hey, what's going on? Like just simple communication just comes back to that connection and communication. They're my biggest things. And if the child doesn't want to talk about it, just what would help you right now? What can I do to help you right now? Can we set the table up together? Would that help? And you find sometimes, I don't know about you, but when we're driving, for example, my boys don't stop talking. Everything comes out, everything. Like I know about who fought with who played with who, what, how they felt. And, after last night, like there was a lot of stuff going on for my boy that he created as a belief for himself because of the meaning that he's put to the events that were happening in his day.
Yeah.
None of them were true for me or his brother, but in his head it was.
Yeah.
So again, it comes down to learning what is bothering them and giving them different evidence for their brain, because that's what happens with the brain. It goes, no one cares about me. So it starts looking for all the actions of nobody caring about me.
Yeah.
Right. But then if we are able to stop that and go, well, is that true? And this is a little bit of Byron Katie's work, going, is this actually true? No one cares about me. Where can I find the opposite evidence? The brain will look for that as well.
Yeah.
When we understand that about the brain and how it works, we are able to then work with our children to change those, meanings that they're putting, so that these beliefs are not being created about themselves.
Yeah. And with a lot of kids and even adults, sometimes, we can have tantrums, or we can feel overwhelmed, or feel like really angry or really sad or something like that, and often not know why.
Yeah.
And that's another thing too, is if you say to your kid, so what I like to do is I like to just feedback what I'm seeing to the child. So the kid stamps their foot, I don't want to sit at the table, you make me do too much around here, I just want to relax, I've had a busy day at school, whatever comes out. And so what I do is I will say to them, wow, I can see that you've got a lot of angry feelings there, or you're looking really upset. How can we get those feelings out? Because sometimes if you say, what's going on for you, like they might have no idea. Yeah. It might just be a culmination of a build up from weeks and weeks and weeks. And it might have just been one little thing that happened at school that day that triggered it. Yeah. But they don't necessarily have that.
Exactly.
They don't necessarily have that. They couldn't make that connection, right?
Yeah.
So to just say, well, how can we get these big feelings out is what I might say to a young child. And it's no different if you've taken the iPad off them and they've got all these emotions coming up about that. Yeah. And so I think you said about being active, about moving your body is really important.
Moving your body is a huge thing. This is why I do yoga with kids, because when we move our body, we move our mood. And it's so, so important, and we really reconnect with ourselves.
Yeah.
I love the way you explain that, because that's, you know, so much of how I feel, of really what we do so much of. And I've had parents and children come up to me saying, I want to be positive all the time, and I, you know, don't want to be sad. And I'm like, but that's, you know, watch the movie Inside Out. I mean, it's such a brilliant movie for children. They really, really, you know, especially those that are on the spectrum, were really able to use that movie to explain how their brain worked. You know, and my eldest uses that. And there's a book also called The Red Beast, where it's about a dog when he gets angry. The ears and the eyes shrink, and he's not able to hear, and he's not able to see, and so he just gets so angry. And it's about how do we help the red beast, you know, but it's not disregarding those emotions. It is actually bringing voice to those emotions so they don't feel bigger, they're not pushed away. Because what happens with a volcano or anything like that, when you suppress it and you push it down, it's going to keep on like building up until it erupts. And so that's why, you know, and I love that, you know, and, you know, giving a voice to what is going on for them. Like, I see that you're feeling angry. I see that you're feeling sad. Do you want to talk through that? You know, what can help you through this? You know, like just a whole bunch of open-ended questions. And I mean, I just have a whole bunch of them, just depending on that situation.
Yeah. So Leanne's got a question, says, what happens when they are oppositional to everything you say? Even I can see that you seem angry or tired.
And what they say, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
That's where I come in and say, so tell me, what do you think it is then? Because this is what I see. How do you feel? Why don't you explain it to me?
Yeah. And what if they don't want it? What if they don't want you to hold the space for them at all? Like, what if they're really...
Yeah, I've heard that as well. I just make sure I let them know. Like, the most important thing for me is for children to, I mean, look, humans, all they want to do is feel heard, we want to be seen, heard, loved, you know, and connected. And with children, like when my son says, I hate you, he doesn't hate me. He just is feeling so much pain that he doesn't know where to put that.
Yeah.
So I think the first thing is, don't take anything they do personally. And so when they don't want you to hold the space, as long as they're being safe and not breaking anything, just let them know that you're there and give them that space. Like my youngest, I remember when he had an operation, had his adenoids out. Oh my gosh. Like all I wanted to do was hold him. Like it was so painful. That I think that was my first, you know, he was 2 years old, and all he was doing was throwing himself on the ground, throwing himself on against a wall, bashing, screaming, like those big shrills, like those shrieks of, you know, screams. And I just had to keep on saying to him, Mummy is here. I'm here when you need me, you know, and I mean, just think about when you get angry and sometimes you don't want anyone to touch you. You don't want anyone near you. You just want to put your head on your pillow and sob your eyes out.
Yeah.
Give your children that same space. You know, trust. I just think sometimes as parents, we want to take all our kids' pain away. We want to do everything for them, that we don't allow them the space to feel and go through it themselves. Because they're smart cookies, you know, they really actually know how to process if we allow that for them. Holding space is not doing it for them. Holding space is even, you know, them being in their room and you being in the kitchen. But as long as they know that when they come out and they're ready to talk, you're there being there for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's helped, Leanne. Was it Leanne?
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing that we used to do with my son when he was very little, like 2 and 3, is we used to teach him to punch the pillow like on his bed.
Oh, yes.
Like to go on his hands and knees and to just like really pummel the pillow so that you can feel like you're getting some anger out and yelling, but being really safe about it and not directing it at anyone. Or
that's it. You know. Well, you need to give anger, you know, anger, fears, jealousy, sadness, all of that needs to be given a healthy outlet. It's actually not bad to feel angry, but we're taught that negative emotions are bad.
Yeah.
Like you said before in school, like don't cry. Oh, you know, I've even had like people say to me in the school, geez, Ruben had that really bad fall and he didn't cry. What a brave boy. And I'm thinking bravery doesn't equal, like not crying doesn't equal being brave, you know. And then at home he nicks his finger and like all the tears come out. But that's because they feel safe.
Yes.
You know, in letting their emotions out. And I just really, really believe that we need a movement of parents going, it's safe to allow your emotions out, but how do we do it in a safe, productive way? Yeah. Energy, all energy is just emotions in motion. Like they need to move.
Yeah.
You know, so yes, we did that. We've got a punching bag, we've got the pillows, the screaming in the pillows. We even go out in the forest and they bang sticks on rocks, and you know, you just find what works for you and your family, but it needs to be, you know, there needs to be a safe outlet for emotions.
Yeah.
Mm.
And what about if the kids seem to use their emotions manipulatively, so you know, to get themselves out of doing something that they don't want to do, and you know, they'll cry, or you know, stamp their feet or whatever because they don't want to set the table, and that kind of becomes a pattern. Like they're all completely fine until you ask them to do anything to contribute, and then if something they don't like doing, you know, that they have a bit of a drama about it.
Well, I guess I just come back to, like, in our house, we just have, you know, we've got like the family rules. And for me, I guess I'm really clear that I want to raise boys that are compassionate yet strong. And what that looks like for me is men who know how to contribute in the household, and not leave everything, you know, to the mum. So my boys, we're really like, I don't have them here, I used to actually, but we've like made together, you know, a chores list, a fun list, a homework list, like a bunch of different lists that they get to tick. And the thing is, it is a bit of an external motivation, like there's intrinsic, extrinsic motivation kind of stuff. But, you know, for them, for example, in the morning, they can have iPad, they can have TV. So this is the thing, like I never want it to kind of be a punishment thing or something that they just gorge on the weekend. Like I just want it in little increments throughout the week so that it does become normal. But, you know, just like for me, I can't just sit down and, you know, be on my phone, for example, and check Facebook without getting their lunches done first, without having my breakfast, without getting dressed. If we need these things to happen, you know, in order for us to function. So it's having them understand that and having them be part of that. So have them sit down and create those rules together and understand why those rules are created.
Yeah.
You know, in order for us to eat, you need to set the table. The table doesn't get set, then we don't eat. You know, and breaking those patterns, I guess, like if it's happening continuously day after day, like where the meltdowns are happening just because of setting the table up, let's just say, break it. It just becomes habits, and habits are just patterns, right? Because we've practiced them long enough. So rather than setting up the table, put up a picnic rug, or go outside and have a picnic, or just break the pattern so it's not the same every night. And then you find you'll be able to come back to setting up the table. What
I would do is talk to them about, well, if you hate setting the table so much, then what else can you do instead? Like, can we swap jobs?
But that comes together when you set up all the rules together. And the chores, you know what I mean? Like my mum's got chores, Ruben has his chores, Logan has his chores, how they share them as well. So like, for example, you know, the washing machine needs to be filled and the dishwasher needs to be emptied, you know, almost every morning. Now you discuss it amongst yourselves, who's going to do what. And, you know, iPads don't come out, TV doesn't get switched on until this stuff is all done. You know, and it works really well. Like 90% of the time, it works really well. We also need to give our kids at the moment a little bit of a break with, especially if you're in Melbourne, like with everything that's going on, there's so many different factors that are affecting, you know, children's emotional well-being, families, mums, dads, like all of us. So, you know, we need to take that into consideration and be gentle with ourselves. And
I totally agree. And if they're, you know, as a parent, if you're going through a whole lot of stuff and you just can't be present for your child because you're just completely overwhelmed, you've lost your job, or you know, you're missing family, like there are emotions are just running really high, and your kids are spending way more time on screens right now than you would like them to be, you also just need to give yourself a break about that as well, and get some support.
Please seek help. Like, ask for help, please. If you are at that point, and I did get to a point like that almost, you know.
I get to a point like that, like, regularly, and I just have to keep, you know, having.
Reach out to your community, reach out, like, connect with people, just ask for help, you know, talk to your GP, whatever it is that you need. Go out there and do it. You're not alone. Don't let your ego and your pride get in the way. Like, you know, the most important thing for me is that so many families, like, oh, mums go, oh, you go away on retreats quite a bit, or you do this for yourself a lot, or you have too many massages, or whatever the judgment might be, right? But I'm like, well, if I'm not okay, if this vehicle here is not okay, they're not okay.
Yeah.
You know, and I sing about this all the time. We are our children's role models. Whatever we want them to be, we need to be ourselves.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a really nice point to finish up on.
Thank you. We could talk about so much, right? But I mean, look, for anybody that's got any further questions, you know, pop them in. But what I also do want to leave you with is you have all the answers within you. Like, go in within and trust your intuition as a parent who knows what's best for their child, and operate from that space.
Thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your beautiful nuggets of wisdom with us.
Thank you for having me.
Being so honest and open as well about your own journey, and really, really appreciate your time.
You're welcome. Thank you.